including information and communications technology, refining, oil and gas, aluminium production, seaport construction, harbor construction and dredging services, financial services, satellite technology, development, unending, and other critical sectors. Interesting conversations there. Well, over the years, not just Nigeria, but the whole of Africa have seen, quite an interesting input of China in their development. So you go to places like Kenya, there is a big, investment. They have a stadium built by China. Also, Cote d'Ivoire for the 2023 AFCON, there was also a stadium, that had a partnership with China. So you have a touch of investment. And when you come to Nigeria, you look at the Abuja Blue Rail also, part of what, it's not like a donation, but yes, made it possible through loans and partnerships and all that. So it's looking like they constantly have something to bring, because I feel like Africa is a large market that we can't ignore.
Talking about Africa being a large market, China on its own, from the Ministry of Commerce in Beijing, they said that they committed over $700 billion to invest in Africa from over a decade of it, So if we look at this investment, which spans across infrastructure, you also know that the conversation by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Xi Jinping was indeed in line with what China-Africa trade is all about. But first, let's take that package, and when we come back, we have our guest on the show to talk about the China-Nigeria relationship.
China seeks to entice African leaders with more investment opportunities in exchange for better access to raw materials that Africa has in abundance. Here in Beijing, leaders of African countries meet and discuss policies and areas of mutual cooperation with officials from China, Africa's biggest lender and investor. President Bola Tinubu, as leader of the biggest economy in Africa, has his eyes set on increasing foreign direct investments and also strengthening existing bilateral ties with China.
What began as a China support for African nations' independence has evolved into a rich, multifaceted partnership spanning trade, investment, and diplomacy. Over years of our ties, we have been solidified.
Nigeria, under President Tinubu's leadership, already has an advantage with the elevation of ties with the People's Republic of China to a strategic, comprehensive partnership. The Nigerian leader commended the role of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in advancing partnership for mutual development and prosperity.
We have been solidified. We share through high-level engagement, strategic agreement, and a shared vision of growth. China has consistently demonstrated its commitment to Africa, not only through financial and developmental support, but also through cultural exchanges that bring our people closer and closer together.
The bilateral relations between Nigeria and China were formally established in 1971, a decade after Nigeria gained its independence. Relations between the two countries have expanded to include bilateral trade and strategic cooperation, but the relationship has been lopsided, favoring China. This is what President Tinubu's new partnership with China seeks to balance.
Bill Gates, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, says Nigeria gets the largest intervention funds spent by the foundation in Africa. Gates said this during an interview session with selected journalists on the sidelines of the 2024 Nutri-Vision Dialogue.
According to him, helping reduce health inequalities globally is a top priority of the foundation, including getting rid of disease like measles, malaria, and polio.
The Gates Foundation said that it has committed over $7 billion to African countries and institutions through 2026. Now, the foundation's efforts, it said, are directed towards confronting a range of issues, including hunger, disease, gender inequality, and poverty.
He also highlighted Nigeria's potential to become a next exporter of food, citing country's existence, land resources, and favorable soil types. And joining us via Zoom is an African affairs analyst, Paul Ejime. Welcome to the show, Mr. Paul.
Paul, if you can hear us, good morning. Welcome to the show. Of course, it's a live situation, but we'll have Paul joining us, hopefully. But two things we're talking about, countries, or people, countries, so to say, not within Africa, looking out, doing investments in Africa. And then there would always be that question, how much of dependency can Nigeria continue to have on these investments, on these people looking to help, rather than self-dependency?
I think for Bill Gates, who has been in the business of philanthropy for the last 25 years, most especially when it has to do with Africa. Remember, this trip was to two countries, Ethiopia and Nigeria. And in Ethiopia, it was basically about infrastructure,
health,
about agriculture rather, and to Nigeria, it was basically about
health,
primary health care. And when he was talking to, when he attended the FEC meeting yesterday, his primary focus was that Nigeria should be able to build healthcare. He also mentioned the fact that Nigeria is at the forefront, despite there are still a lot more to be done in terms of healthcare. So I think that to a large extent, what the Bill Gates Foundation is doing is to make sure that the donation that they've been giving to Africa is properly utilized. $7 billion is not
until 2026. And then a lot of people have also, shared concerns about the fact that they feel like on some level, these donations are not being monitored. It's like they're just comfortable throwing in money without ascertaining if there is actually the amount of value that those monies they're investing should be getting, as to how it's being spent. So they're wondering, is there an accountability, or is just some level of giving, maybe giving poor African countries money, and then probably, so it's always, people don't want to just take the good. They're always feeling suspicious about, why are you so generous? But then that's what philanthropy is all about.
Yeah, so I think that it's a good conversation that needs to be had but let's talk to Mr. Paul Ejime. Mr. Paul Ejime, good morning and welcome to the show.
Paul, if you can hear us, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear us well? We can hear you.
All right, it's a live situation, and when you also leave, the Belinda, the Bill and Belinda Gates Foundation, they're doing, the investments in vaccines, eradication of polio in Nigeria. Some states have completely, I think we have presently, there was a time Nigeria celebrated, a complete polio-free, but we had an outbreak recently, like 2 years ago, and all that. So you look at all that they do in terms of healthcare. But then the question is, so over the years, why don't we have these donations going to pharmaceutical companies within the country to start self-producing?
I think if you look at it, 40% of sub-Saharan Africa children are malnutrition.
Yeah.
So you look at it from a larger point of view. how much is, if you say 40%, that means that how much is being committed to the different sub-Saharan Africa. But let's even tailor it down to Nigeria. Till 2026 is $7 billion. You know, it takes a lot. That has to, even when the money is being given, that means that the government and the private sector, most especially the pharmaceutical sector, should be hand in hand to get these things done. But of course, it's a conversation that now that he has come to Nigeria to say, okay, we can do much more better. What Nigeria is saying, Nigeria can do much more better than what it's doing. Then of course we'll see how that goes. But of course, we'll go on a break.